Humans need time to learn. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I wish I wasn't human. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film I Am Mother.
Ooh, this is the second Mother in the Mother Cinematic Universe.
Mother Cinematic Universe. It's not Mother.
Still the MCU, though.
Yeah.
There you go.
Shahir with the first MCU joke right off the bat. First 10 to 15 seconds, I would say.
I think Baby Dread coined it best was just, I use the MCU as like a reference to engage you.
And then I just get excited.
You just get excited, and it puts a happy smile on my face.
You know what, Shahir? I understood that reference. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. We are doing the Netflix sci-fi film that kind of flew under my radar at first.
I think it was a film that came out that did get good reviews. We had always intended to do it, but a little bit of a shift of schedule this week. We were going to be doing Lulu Wang's film, The Farewell.
Yes.
But unfortunately couldn't make it out to a screening, so we just wanted to jump on I Am Mother and kind of clear up some of the backlog of films that I always get disappointed by the end of the year when it's like, oh, I really wish we'd done this film, or I really wish we'd done that film to kind of include it in our top 10. Everything I do basically in life is to put things on our top 10 list.
Of course.
Top 10 things I did this year. Top 10 things I messed up on the podcast. Top 10 times I had a great coffee.
If only I had that list. No,
Yeah.
I do want to do The Farewell. I do love Awkwafina from even back in the Code days. I'm sure she might even remember my name if she saw my face, maybe. But
Yeah, we did. I think we both worked with Awkwafina.
she's great, and she was super fun, and she's been. I mean, I was a fan of hers even before I met her from back in the music video days of hers with My Vag, directed by Court Dunn, who has been on this show, I believe.
Oh, has it?
Good stuff. We will get there. Man, the summer is wrapping insanely quickly.
Oh, you think it's good? I think we're like in the peak summer right now, so I'm like sweating down to my nipples.
Oh, no, temperature-wise, you're 100%. The Earth's going to burn up, and we're all going to melt away like a wayward popsicle. What I'm saying is just the timing. Like, every week, it's like, oh, by the way, it's this time again. Have you done the podcast yet? What have you seen? And I'm like, no, what? No, I thought it was Monday, and it's not Monday.
So I guess being a Netflix film, this is making it easier on you. However, not being able to escape to the air conditioning of a movie theater is making it maybe a little bit more difficult on you. We apologize for that. Please email us in your thoughts of films that we should definitely see before the end of the year at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod, as did Dan, who wrote us in about our Spider-Man episode, which went a little bit like this. And I'm just going to say this with a little bit of humble brag.
Oh, good.
Shahir's point about Iron Man and Peter's world not going together for me highlights the issues I have with the MCU Spidey. That being that it isn't Peter Parker and instead a weird combination of Miles Morales in Far From Home and in Far From Home, Riri Williams. For those who don't know, Riri Williams is the latest incarnation of Iron Man in the Iron Man comic books, in which, and this is a version in which Miles and Riri can't exist in the MCU as they are in the comics, because instead Peter is there and as a stand-in for Peter, and as a stand-in for Peter is further not able to be his own character.
Well, first things first, a humble brag is, you can't call it out that it's no longer a humble brag, Shahir. So let's.
No, well, that is because you're saying a humble brag.
No, you don't say humble brag. Things just are humble brags.
No,
the very defining of a humble brag means it's no longer humble.
The person who defined humble brag
Let's do it. Let's go.
No, it was Harris Whittles, rest in peace, from Parks and Recreation, who wrote a book about it called Humble Brag. I think the rules around what a humble brag are loose, but it's basically the punchline to humble brag is to say something and then say humble brag.
But you said it first.
Does that matter?
That's not a punchline. You can't lead with your punchline. Anyway, what? So that
semantics with this guy.
I love it. Semantics should be my middle name. No, I respectfully disagree with Dan's email only because.
Whoa!
I know.
Whoa.
I think there's plenty of room for Miles and Riri in the MCU as we move down the line. Peter Parker. There's been so many iterations of Peter Parker and who Peter Parker is. Now, granted, the core lore, let's say, was core lore, hashtag core lore, was he was a poor kid from Queens that was always really smart, but it was almost like a junker.
Yeah.
And like if any tech he had, he sort of built out of nothing, which doesn't quite make sense, especially when you get to, probably I would say the 80s-ish run when he's still supposed to be super poor. And he does run out of web fluid and whatever, but he always makes like spider lights and spider bots and it's just, he can just do it. He has the magic of technical know-how. So he's always had that. And actually in future iterations in various things, he forms Parker Industries. He actually becomes sort of a Tony Stark when Tony Stark was away. This is actually in the same runs of the comic books as Miles and Riri. So there are.
So he coexists with Miles and Riri. And is it a kind of Batman Beyond scenario where he's passed on the torch?
No, it's sort of so the God, here we go, deep. The Marvel comic books had the Ultimate Universe, and then that eventually collapsed in on itself, and that brought a few characters over, including Miles Morales. So now there's 2 Spider-Men in the MCU, from what I understand, though I haven't kept up with fully in the last year, and Riri is Iron Man. So I think that there is plenty of room. I think if they go sort of I don't know what direction they'll actually go to match them, but they have been done before.
I think what Dan's point is that in the current incarnation, it doesn't feel like
well, sure, they're not going to launch
Morales.
Miles and Riri tomorrow. Like, it's going to be, Peter's going to shift, there's going to be space, and then they're going to come up and be the better versions of what Peter Parker's characteristic, and this I guess will be my last thing I'll say about it, is he's never, because of what he's always pulled in a million different directions, he's only good enough to do one thing at a time. Right. And he's always trying to do all the things at the same time. And no matter what, if he saves the world, his family life suffers. If he messes up a thing and goes after a friend or whatever, they might be safe, but then something dangerous will come down the line. Money always tanks for him because it's just sort of how it goes. He is a classic, 1 foot forward, 2 steps back character. And sometimes he gets ahead, like I think he's kind of positioned right now in the MCU. But I have a feeling as things sort of move forward, especially with this the revelations at the end of the last film, which I won't spoil in case you haven't seen it, things might go a different way.
Okay.
Anyway.
I no real opinion about that other than I guess my only thought about the Peter Parker MCU thing right now is it feels... I want more Miles Morales. I want more Into the Spider-Verse than I do MCU Spider-Verse.
I bet you at a certain point they will figure out a way to sort of
bend the 2 worlds together.
Kind of, like, at least in a rules-based perspective. Like, if Miles Morales shows up in the MCU... His
uncle has.
His uncle has, yeah. Prowler.
No. Miles Morales' uncle has.
Yeah, Prowler.
No, Prowler was the Prowler. Oh, was that Danny Glover's character? Was Prowler?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So I don't know. They could easily do some multiverse shit if they wanted to, and I think no one would care at this. It's gotten so weird. Like, you could just go.
Put me on that list of not caring. Thank you very much for that. Again, you can email us in. We've got some interesting things happening on Twitter about Midsummer imagery as well. Check out our episode on Midsummer, which came out last week. We're not going to spoil anything from Midsummer this week, but please check out that film as we both thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, and side note, we were just on another podcast. We crossed the multiverse ourselves, Shahir. We were on Jacob's Movie Motion to talk about Midsummer. So I think by the time this comes out, that'll be out. So go check us out invading other people's cinematic universes.
It's a fantastic podcast which tries to figure out how you emotionally connect to a film. The podcast is called Movie Motion, MOVIEMOTION.
There you go.
Spelling bee is all coming back to me. It's a fun episode between 4 different states where we're trying to figure out how to emotionally connect with each other when we can't even see each other, and usually we're out of sync with each other. But it's a lot of fun.
Their questions that they had for us were, I don't even want to spoil it, but they were real fun.
Yeah, really fun. Put me on the spot, put both of us on the spot in terms of emotional resonance. So really enjoyed that. Jacob's also a listener to the show, so shout out to Jacob. What's up? All right. So we're into another Netflix film that we haven't talked about in a while, or we haven't actually done a Netflix film in a while. But this one comes from Down Under, which makes me excited, from an Australian writer-director by the name of Grant Spator.
Yes.
Actually, no, he is the director, but there is another writer on this, Michael Lloyd Green, who might be British, so I won't hold that against them.
And you won't hold the Australian against the other gentleman either.
No, of course not.
Doesn't New Zealand and Australia have a bit of a
rivalry?
rivalry?
And this week, the rivalry between New Zealand and the UK got very, very heated as both of them went into the Cricket World Cup. And New Zealand lost kind of controversially.
Oh.
Irrespective of how many wickets we took, we're going to jump into the future to I Am Mother. Matt, do you want to read us the IMDb synopsis for I Am Mother?
I would love nothing more than to do just that. A teenage girl is raised underground by a kindly robot, quote, mother, designed to repopulate the Earth following an extinction of mankind. But their unique bond is threatened when an inexplicable stranger arrives with alarming news.
Alarming news.
Yeah.
You're being raised by a robot. That's pretty
You're
alarming.
being raised by a robot.
Yeah.
But it's not, that's a whole cave shadow scenario. You don't know that that's weird.
So I put this on in the middle of the night last night. I've been working very long hours, and so this was the last task among many that I put on. And the first thing that freaked me out was the runtime. It was it's close to 2 hours, and it was.
Is it?
Yeah, it's close to 2 hours, and the only thing that freaked me out about that was that I'm tired. No, 2 hours doesn't normally freak me out, but I'm very tired, and I started watching at midnight. I could not take my eyes away from this movie.
Yeah.
And my wife was sort of in the next room. She heard the baby cry, and she came out, and she was like, "Oh, what is this movie?" And she sat down and she started watching.
Oh, she watched it.
And she was like, "Man, this is great." And I don't normally do like a non-analytical, I just love a thing. I just love this thing. I love this thing pretty unabashedly, and I have so much to say about why I think this is kind of a work of genius. But more than anything, I think there's been a run of there's a thing in the short film world of proof of concept science fiction short films.
Yes.
Which often turn out to be less than stellar in terms of their effectiveness. But it is
when they become a feature, you're saying.
When they become a feature. But basically, and you and I both know this, I've taken a bunch of meetings about this, but essentially, every studio is always impressed by a young filmmaker able to create a science fiction short film because science fiction, for whatever reason, demonstrates a technical acumen. And so whenever someone does a short film that demonstrates a technical acumen, that is heralded as something very valuable. It also, usually science fiction properties are very sellable, much like horror was back in the day. We also live in a period where science fiction is much more producible than it used to be.
I have a theory on why the technical acumen, like why it's sort of a proof of the person's abilities or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I think it's because in order to craft a compelling sci-fi film, no matter what your budget, no matter what you're doing, you have to balance all of your elements to make sure that whatever fantastical world you're building it feels real.
Yeah, it's world building.
It's one more step because you have to do that in any film, right?
Yeah.
But if you're doing like a drama set in the 2000s, like you got to get that sort of feel right. But at the same time, you're just worried about making people feel like people or making them feel like however you want them to feel in that constrained space. This is be a real person, but also there's sentient maybe robots and underground bunkers and an extinction level event. But make us believe this,
right?
And it's harder, I think. It's harder. It's more. It's more.
What's unfortunate for me observing from the sidelines is that there's a lot of incredible dramas, comedies that aren't genre pieces that get looked over in favor, in my opinion, of lesser science fiction pieces because the science fiction pieces just have that kind of whiz pop bang factor to it. So it's all shiny. But this was, in fact, everything I'm saying, this was not a short film, I believe, but this was a feature length pitch that was
since 2016.
That was written, and it ended up on the blacklist. And the thing is, I think this is the epitome of what people are actually looking for in that genre, or should be looking for. It's a shame that it hasn't made much more of a splash, although I can't imagine watching this and going, we're not going to hire this guy to do
Right.
100 different films. Then I want to, and I think the thing that I want to posit for our later on discussion, outside of just the things we liked and things we think worked, I wondered very curiously and want to posit as a question: what if the world of franchise building looked and felt like this? Because one of the things that I kind of felt very strongly while watching this is that this is a spiritual successor to the Terminator films. And if the Terminator, and I think the Terminator films past Terminator 2 have all been pretty bad. If a Terminator film felt like this, I think we'd be in a pretty amazing place. And this to me really felt like a spiritual, not necessarily a direct sequel or anything like that.
Or a thematic successor.
But it's spiritual successor to the Terminator franchise, in that I think it captures the essence of what makes Terminator special, and not the whiz pop bang things that we all that I think every movie has just tried to build on.
I think it. Oh,
this is a big question. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just kind of positing it for later. But that was my initial thoughts as I was watching it.
I'm 50-50 on that. I think. I think there is no right answer. Terminator for me, beyond just the action, sort of as you've quoted, the whiz bang of it, has always been about the fear of man's creation sort of destroying us, right? And that destruction in the Terminator films was just killing us, because it's only known war. I mean, you could even look at oh God, we just did so many things on Extra Sci-Fi and Extra Credits. We just did I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, which is basically a story where the computers of the world eventually linked up, became sentient, and because it was only fed on like military and like killing data, like that's all people became. And then when it killed all the people, it left 6 alive just to torture because it was so angry, or whatever the computer equivalent of angry was. That to me is a very Terminator feeling thing. What's even more, I think, and this is where I think it might be rather than a spiritual successor, and again, this is a semantic thing, I might even say an evolution, because a monster coming to kill you because it hates you because it was programmed to hate you is scary, right? A monster that, and without getting into too many spoilers, like might still have some best interests of things at heart behind why it's doing things. I think is much more interesting and makes you not. There's the baseline, oh no, I might die, sort of scary, but then there's the, oh God, I might agree with why I'm gonna die. Like there's a lot more to think about from a humanity perspective in I Am Mother than the Terminator films.
Right, and I think spiritual successor and evolution aren't mutually exclusive.
No.
So that was just like, as I was watching it, that was the thought that came to mind. But I think, like uncannily, there's a lot of nods to James Cameron's Terminator movie in this, not least of which the actual we see some flying devices that look very reminiscent of Terminator.
Oh yeah, the Hunter Killers.
Yeah, and then there's actually a direct moment where it feels like it's a riff straight from Terminator 2. But I think that I'm pointing those out as I think that they're fun more than anything. This is a film unto itself that is beautifully made, elegantly told, and absolutely captivating. I could not, late in the middle of the night, I could not take my eyes off this thing.
And it's funny, too, because, full disclosure, as we sort of stated before, we plan on doing a different film this week. And then we're like, whoa, okay, well, you know what? There's a couple on our back catalog that have looked interesting. But here's the deal. So, a lot of times I watch a Netflix film and I'm like, sometimes they're phenomenal. Roma, like, But then, like, other times we're just sort of like, all right. I mean, there was
Cloverfield Paradox.
Well, I mean, that was just a piece of shit. But
also a Netflix film. This was not a Netflix produced. They bought it.
They bought it. Yeah. And because it did feel like it meant for a theatrical. I don't know. Like
I think this is the thing. Is I wish this movie played in a theater and people went to see it, because I cannot. I love this thing so much. I cannot imagine. And it speaks to such a broad audience.
Yeah.
That whole 4-quadrant thing. This speaks so far across those 4 quadrants that I can't imagine this thing not doing well in the theater. But maybe it's a little slow. Maybe that's an issue. But I absolutely love it.
I would never call this film slow. Like if and I know you're not. I'm just saying, I know people might call it slow in this sort of day and age, but like it's slow like Alien is slow.
Right.
Like, Alien's not slow. It's just stuff's not moving super quickly across the screen all the time. Like, there's emotional tension being built, breathing, if you will, in both films there. I think that, the interesting thing is when I turned this on, I had that like, well, it's a Netflix sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
Let's see how this goes. And it was so good. I actually, in the first 10 minutes I was watching it, then I had to take a call. It was a call I was waiting for all day. And I started, rather than talking about the business stuff I had to talk about, I just talked about, I was like, I'm not normally this much gushy about this sort of stuff, but I'm 10 minutes into this Netflix sci-fi film, and I'm like, can I talk about it for a second? So I talked about it with the person I was on the phone with, and then I went back to it, and I was like, I am enjoying myself, and I did throughout. And I think, obviously, pacing and the way it sort of sets itself up is in the very beginning of sort of showing Mother the robot waking up and growing the first person, and the child growing up, etc., is very effective. But also, man, the art direction and the set design and the way that they've built tech, felt so real and possible. And it's so funny because it gets through a bunch within the first 10 or 15 minutes. I'm writing my notes and I'm watching it and I'm just like, this is beautiful. I can't believe it. And I was like, wait, I got to stop gushing about this. I need a criticism. I was like, no, because like sometimes I worry that like my own fanboy will be showing and like I can't actually, like there has to be something a little bit off somewhere. So I was like,
that's not how criticism works.
It is for me. Sometimes I worry that
you don't need to have a negative.
I understand you don't need to have a negative. I think you can find a negative in anything if you look hard enough. I mean, that's a shitty way of sort of thinking. But like to say something is, for instance, perfect is not constructive.
Well,
because then there's no room for improvement. Then why make more stuff?
Unless you truly think it's perfect and you have a reason for saying that.
Right, but then it's like, well, why keep watching movies? Just keep watching that one again. Anyway, we're getting off track. My point is, I was like, okay. I was like, I wonder if there's anything here that I'm not enjoying.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, well, you know what? Here's a facility underground where it seems like for years nothing broke down, and like it's just tech that just keeps working. And I literally started writing, "Love a tech world that never breaks," and then it shows her fixing the daughter fixing Mother's hand because it broke, and I was like, cross it out.
Cross that
like,
out.
It was only happened once or twice, but every time where I'm like, this could break my immersion. Oh nope, it didn't.
Yeah, I think you could, if you wanted to, nitpick little story elements like there's a person who enters the film later on, and there's a question mark around how this person has survived for so long. But I know we're not going to go down this rabbit hole, and I don't want to make a point of this, but I don't think that's. Looking for something negative I don't think that's a really positive way to do it. Like seeing something negative and noting it.
But you never think to yourself when you're watching anything. When you're just like, well, you even said at the beginning of this thing where you're like, you normally don't go into these things on just like, oh my God, I just love this thing. What was it exactly you said?
I don't always. No, my point there is I always want to have like a point of criticism. Sorry. But I'm not using criticism in the same way you're using it. Point of criticism is the ability to engage with a topic.
Right.
It's not criticism as in I'm criticizing you. It's engaging in the art of criticism.
I'm talking about that sort of thing too. I think I might have just worded it differently.
Right. But and again, I'm not being. I just think if you see something that you don't like, respond to it. But if you don't, then there's no reason. But
that's my point. I did see a thing. I was like, oh wait, I maybe I worded it wrong.
Yeah.
I was engaged with the film.
Yeah.
I then was like, this is a little weird that the super clean thing works for 30 years and nothing breaks. Oh, there's something broken.
Right.
Like it was that moment of my brain was like, maybe there's something. Oh,
right.
Nope. Like maybe I painted that too much. Like I was looking for a thing.
Just here's how I would phrase what you're saying is the sustainability of the technology is slightly stretches credulity. Right, that's essentially what you're saying.
Right, I thought that, and then it addressed it.
But you know,
instantly, it was the timing was perfect.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a particular and I know you'd immediately credited, but it immediately corrected that for you. But I don't think that's a strong point of contention against this film.
I'm not saying that. Yeah. I'm literally. Stop trying to make me disagree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah, okay. All right, fair enough. Moving on. Because, this is going to be one of those episodes. And I think part of this is also the process of discovery as well. This is a film that, isn't playing very far and wide. It's not talked about super much. It came out People who saw it enjoyed it. It's got a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, but a 73% from an audience score. And the audience score, is things like the whole storyline was real. I'm reading some of the comments right now. The whole storyline was really bad. Prepare for a letdown ending. The film was a little dark for me. Like things like that. And I there's a point at which and we've talked about the discrepancy between the audience score and the critic score. And for example, in the Marvel's world, for example, that relationship is flipped around. And I wonder. Part of me wonders about whether the audience is right and the critics are wrong, or whether the critics are like trying to drag the audience into a place that they believe. It's a bit of a mixture of both, because ultimately oftentimes the things that are critically reviled make a ton of money. A lot of people see and engage with it. The things that critics love don't tend to make a lot of money and don't get seen. So there's no balance to this equation that actually makes correct sense. Like in the ideal scenario for me, like speaking broadly, I would love it if films that critics loved and engaged with were the films that went on and made a lot of money because people saw the value in them in their engagement. Like we talked about this, we were on a podcast called The Test of Time a little bit earlier this year, and we talked about a film called Sorcerer by William Friedkin. And one of the things William Friedkin talked about very powerfully was that how prior to Star Wars, audiences never even considered how much money a movie made. Like they never, there was never any conversations of you should go see this because the box office is so huge. And I wonder about that push and pull in the dynamic of the cinematic world that we live in right now.
Are you saying there might be some unintended negative consequences to capitalism?
I think I'm positing the question. It's funny. I think that's an interesting thing. Regardless, I am 100% unabashedly in love with this movie.
Here's why I'm going to say something not about the negative about the MCU, but negative about what the MCU has wrought, or things like it. I think people know at this point. I seem to I'm obviously a big fanboy of that sort of stuff and the summer blockbustery action stuff, of course. But I don't think I could be a fan of all of those things if I also wasn't a fan of deeper, more consistently psychological, I will say, cinema, because I need for my viewing diet. I need all stuff. Obviously the food pyramid is bullshit, but you do need to when fueling yourself, no matter how you're describing it, too much of one thing is always bad for you, and I worry that people that say watch this and are like, oh, it's too slow or disappointing ending, are people that have been trained so much in what they watch and not sort of going outside of their comfort zones quite a bit, and that sucks. I hope if there's one, this is gonna be a weird statement. If there is one boon that I would like to this podcast to do for people is, no matter what side of this coin you're on, if you're on Shahir's side or my side or
are we even on opposite sides?
I don't know, we're not on this one, but or if you're literally that 1 in a million chance where the coin lands on its edge, I hope that we cover enough of a breadth of cinema here where if you came here for Spider-Man Far From Home, you could also also
leave
take away
with I Am Mother
or Burning or something else, or vice versa, because I do really think that the way to have a sort of healthy mind about these sort of things is to engage in all different types of it, and this movie was such a pleasant surprise for me, and such a missing element in what I feel a lot of sci-fi is trying to do these days, in terms of pacing, in terms of actually having something to say,
right,
and not getting lost in its own weeds by the end,
right.
Yeah, I dug it, and it was a breath of fresh air at the end of my Tuesday evening when I was overworked and I was just sort of like, I don't know if okay. And same thing, Shahir. I just watched it and I was like, yep,
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
And I was on my edge of the seat pretty much till the end.
And I think the reason is that there's so much meat on this film to chew on in terms of what it's asking philosophically, and to me that was the sort of most interesting parts of Terminator and the Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, is the sense that there is a philosophy to what is happening in these, like, can a robot take care and feel an emotion for something even though it's pre-programmed to.
My favorite parts were the catchphrases.
In this film?
No, in Terminator 2.
Oh, okay, all right, gotcha. So that's the two sides of the
Chill
coin.
out,
right?
dickwad.
Yeah. Okay, that's the two sides. That's the philosophy I'm talking about. Should you relax when your when your state of mind is one of being a dickwad?
Yeah.
No, I think the film really cleverly sets up this idea right at the beginning, and it's through this medical philosophy that question that is asked of daughter at one point.
The mother's teaching a class, and there's like a cool holographic classroom.
Yeah, and the question that mother asks, I think, is kind of the key to the entire film here, which is that there are 5 patients who all require five organs. A patient comes in who is ill and is a candidate match for all five people. If the doctor doesn't care, delays care, the patient will simply die, and 5 other people will get the organs they need. However, the question is that if the doctor doesn't helps this person, the other 5 will likely die. So the question there is obviously, like the medical, the ethics of medical treatment and who is entitled to care, and what is the greater good an appropriate philosophy when you're taking someone's life, and I think that there are obviously a lot of philosophical texts on this particular subject,
and daughter even asks the right questions by the end of that sort of statement of the classroom, being like, well, yeah, there's the sheer numbers of it, but also, who are these people? And then who am I to judge who these people are?
Yeah, I think the question she asks is a sort of more information gathering exercise, and I think that question is irrelevant to the sort of the thought process, because the thought process is it doesn't matter. Are you only going to help people for whom you have judged to be worthy of your help?
Well, there's two sides of that. Yeah, of course.
And I think the question that's being asked there more broadly is one person's life more willing to sacrifice over the greater good, which is a question that comes into play later on in the film. And I think the reason why this film works so well is that philosophical underpinning to what the film is so strongly set up and so strongly played out throughout the entirety of the film, and it never feels like the film ever gives way to just have a big whiz-bang action sequence. It does have fairly exciting, tense sequences later on in the film, but it never feels like they're at the sake of that philosophical question.
Well, the thing is, we talk about like what's best for the greater good, or how do you serve the greater good. The thing about this film that's actually really, really amazing, and we'll get into spoilers in a minute, but yeah, there's that question, and it doesn't really answer it because you really can't. And then
Emmanuel can't.
Yeah. Ooh. And then, but then it then takes it even a step further, and is like, yeah, who's greater good?
Yeah.
What is greater good? How do you define the greater good? And it's like, you're like, oh no.
Well, that's what that question, these philosophical questions are sort of designed to ask.
To elevate you to that second level of it. And this movie does that very, very well with how it reveals the why of what's going on.
And the why is kind of surprising in that it's not
tropey.
It doesn't feel like there is a sort of the film is probing the question and pondering it and asking questions. It doesn't definitively come down on good or bad or this is right and this is wrong. It kind of opens that question up, which I think, again, the reason why I think this is a spiritual successor to Terminator is one of the greatest elements of Terminator 2, for example, is the long road at the end of it. Like that shot of the winding road where Sarah Connor basically says, I don't know what the future holds, but I'm hopeful. And that, the future could be terrible, the future could be great. It's basically pondering that question. And I think the sort of, okay, so the sort of business side of me goes, this is the person whom should be given the helm of a franchise like that. And they should be given the helm with the freedom to make a tiny film within this franchise, to make a story within this franchise that is not about setting up another film, but telling a tiny story within it that essentially underpins what makes this franchise interesting.
I think two things you said there aren't mutually exclusive. You could do both and still set up for a thing. Like you can do both. It just doesn't happen terribly
It doesn't
often.
happen terribly often. So again, this film just got my brain thinking about a lot of things. The other thing that it got me thinking about was there's this exercise we did in design class in year 1 of design class, which it's basically become like a way I approach life kind of thing, and I think this film kind of plays into it. But essentially, we were told to go and model, to look at a space, and I was given like a harbor dock, and to create a model of it, which is not a one-to-one representation of it, but takes the essence of it and can be its own thing.
Right.
And so the idea is that you're supposed to create kind of like a sculpture or something like that, which evokes the feeling of that place, but is not a representation. Like the absolute wrong answer is to do a model of a dog.
Right.
And that's kind of what I thought about this film in that I don't think it's directly trying to be a successor to Terminator, for example. I just think it ends up being that by essentially taking the essence of what is interesting of Terminator and modeling it and creating something that is unto itself, which is this idea of the relationship between algorithm and free will.
Well, it's an elevation. It's an evolution of it. Like it's robots. Now we're gonna get into at this point. Let's just say we're gonna be getting into spoilers because it's hard to talk about the stuff without getting into it. So if you haven't seen it, pause. Let's go watch the wonderful 2 hours, then come back. Oh, hi, how you doing? This starts positing, depending on the evil robot's programmed philosophy, is it evil?
Yeah.
Like Terminator, you're like, nowhere in the story is it ever like, oh, they're doing it for a good reason, a possible good reason, other than like kill human bad nonsense. Like it's, again, I think it goes back. Terminator is a bit more of a have no mouth and I'm a scream scenario where like computers were trained to hate, therefore they hate.
I don't think computers are trained to hate. I think they're trained to make that's the interesting thing. They're trained to make an algorithmic decision of like what is the greater good, right?
No, not in Terminator. Terminator is they were machines of war, and then they realized they had sort of I guess
no, they made a calculation.
They made a calculation, but like not in the, so their calculation in Terminator is greater good of I guess the planet.
Yeah.
So they kill all the people.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing. In I Am Mother, the greater good is still for humans. It's just what the algorithm considers the greater good for humans.
Yeah, and it gets into this question because what happens later on is we reveal that daughter is not the first daughter that has been birthed into the world, and the failure of the previous daughters has led them to sort of doing this sort of almost. I guess selective breeding process. Although I will say Mother's selective breeding process was really flawed, which is that she wasn't breeding. She was basically taking isolated cases and hoping that they would turn out, as opposed to, like in genetics, taking the best of this person and putting it in with this person.
She was doing what humans have been doing with dogs, for instance.
With dogs is like for example, the breeding of foxes has a long story of like how foxes became domesticated.
But I'm saying I do believe that Mother's plan would eventually get there with the breeding of the type. She's creating the proto people to then breed with.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they don't measure up, something I thought was really smart about this movie was the line that I said in the beginning: mothers need time to learn.
Yeah.
And at first, when we first found out that that there were other kids and they were basically their remains were incinerated. The way they play this character of Mother, I was on Mother's side for most of this film.
Yeah.
And I was like, I bet you it's a misunderstanding. I bet you, like, the line of it takes mothers a long time to learn would be like her basically, and it's a horrible thought, but a machine raising a child, there's going to be accidents. And, like, I thought it was like she accidentally killed kids as she was. I thought it was going to go that route of, like, questioning, like, it can't do this great the first time.
Yeah.
Of course, it doesn't do that, but I liked that my brain went there and that it had another subversion again, where I was like, oh,
Yeah, the text is open enough that you could interpret it or you could allow yourself the room to interpret it in many ways.
I think it has a very definitive of the what happened and why. I think it has a definitive ending
in terms of what Mother was doing.
Yes,
but what?
But I liked that I didn't up until the end. I didn't have a clear like. It left me guessing the motivations of what Mother was doing.
Yeah, and I think the ending is kind of that opens that question, because ultimately Mother posits the self-sacrifice she sort of takes in she accepts the self-sacrifice that she posited originally in that medical question, because essentially what Daughter says in that sequence is like, if I'm giving up my life, then I think that's okay. I'm expected to take on the burden, but I can't choose that for somebody else.
Yeah.
And Mother makes that choice at the end by allowing Daughter to shoot her. But of course, she doesn't really, because Mother is part of a greater consciousness. And she also, there's a final sequence with Hilary Swank, which realizes that Mother's role in all of this has been slightly, I'm not sure if insidious is the word, but slightly
meticulous.
Yeah, slightly more
involved.
Involved. And the question I pondered was like, was the source of embryos Hilary Swank? What?
Oh, interesting. No, I took it as. Again, I don't know, because the film doesn't really talk about, like, first it lies in the beginning of the film, and it's like, oh, there was a plague and humanity died, and that's why we're here, and you can't go outside because the contagions and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Turns out that's not the case. Seems like robots just killed a bunch of people.
No, is that the case? I think they talk about how humans died out, but they didn't say why.
Well, they talked about
humans. Robots are certainly killing humans now.
Yeah, well, because they were basically killing humans.
Or were they? Because Hilary Swank's character, who does she have a name?
No, she's woman.
She's woman. Says that they flooded out the mine shafts, which is where
But here's the thing, that could have happened. So this is what I love about this movie. The stuff that the human characters are talking about, like, they talk about in terms of like a human being's lifespan.
Right.
Mother's playing like hundreds or thousands of years game.
Yeah,
here.
well, she's a
because
her lifespan
or
is
its life, I should say. And so they're talking about like, oh, the machines came and stormed the caves or whatever. Like, we don't actually know why the machines started killing the people.
Right.
Maybe there was a plague and people were going crazy, and then they had to do it, and their motivation was programmed to save humanity, and the way they thought to do it was start it again under the tutelage of their own the programmed code of ethics that they sort of have.
Yeah.
Maybe they saw the Earth in a Terminator-esque sort of scenario where it's just people just killing each other in senseless wars, and they're like, we can end this and do it better. But we can do it better based on what humans taught us was ethical, because they're not acting ethically. So maybe they did then swarm and destroy all the humans in a great war. It never goes into that.
I think there's a certain degree of imagery towards the end as Mother and woman are walking across the sort of barren landscape, which suggests that there was
Mother and woman?
Yeah, Daughter and woman walking across the landscape, and we see sort of a barren like a barren ground where things don't grow, and then they're passing oil wells and rigs and things like that. As in, the implication to me is that there is a resource problem and an eventual dying out of the ability to grow food.
Maybe it's an environmental thing.
Yeah,
maybe it's a thing that humans killed the ability to sustain their own population, and then they're
and then woman talks. Hilary Swank's character talks about how she'd never seen crops grow, but suddenly in the last suddenly crops are starting to grow, and the machines seem to be cultivating a process for like growing food. So this is the interesting thing, because machines don't need food unless they need unless they're using cornstarch oil or something like that. But they're essentially cultivating food again for a reemergence of the human population.
Yeah, that they have then hopefully trained to be ethical and not destroy the planet.
Yeah.
I loved the design of the corn machines, like those just long rows of like giant arms that were just like moving across the thing.
And we saw the hunter killer, what looked like the hunter killer, and that was, to me, I was like, oh, that's the most overt reference to the Terminator franchise. But I kind of watched this and go, man, God, imagine if we lived in a world where Terminator whatever was this film.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but here's the thing. We have this film. Like, I like Terminator for its Terminator has some, and I'm specifically talking about 1 and 2.
Yeah, those are the only ones really worth talking about.
Has a good sort of simplified, like I would say like a 101 level of philosophy to it. Right.
I would posit that it's slightly deeper than that, but
but something like this is like a 301 or a 401. Like it's like because there's layer upon layer with it.
Yeah.
So I go back to I sometimes do want evil robots who just think they're good and I can get behind the humans because obviously the robots are wrong. And this film, I'm like,
yeah. It actually, so one of the things I always like to do is to think about the references that the film posits towards you, because I think those references are key to just thinking about what the filmmaker might be thinking about. They shouldn't be treated as canon or anything like that, or as absolute, but it's interesting to look at what the filmmaker is drawing upon. One to me is it felt like a lot of this film was drawing on the works of the artist Simon Stahlhag. Have you seen any of his?
No.
He does these post-apocalyptic paintings where there's been like a kind of fallout between machines and humanity, and we're kind of living in a world where there's a sort of negotiated space between those two things.
Okay.
So you see things like robots acting as nannies for little kids, or little kids playing around with like toy guns, and they happen to be playing around the foot of a giant robot, or things like that. So there's been this fallout. So I felt like the work is kind of leading there. The other one is the book that Hilary Swank is drawing her pictures in, which is The God of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. He wrote the John Carter from Mars series, which is this idea of like this alternate landscape where humanity has no place, and God of Mars is an interesting one because it's kind of like a small story within that bigger world, or a smaller story within that bigger world, and I think that approach is really fruitful in this case, like the sort of, ultimately this film ticks so many boxes that work so well. Like, again, I thought of the film we reviewed a couple of years ago, 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yes.
Like that sort of sense of,
shout out to Dan Trachtenberg, who just redid the Warframe opening cinematic,
and he's about to be doing the Uncharted film.
Yep.
And like I thought about that sort of self-contained cinema of doubt, like where a character is doubting the sort of the truth that has been presented to them,
sure,
and like has to negotiate whether that truth still holds. And this character of daughter kind of has to do that several times over. I thought about the film Moon a lot, the Duncan Jones film, with this sort of sentient artificial intelligence that is ultimately there to help this character that is entirely isolated.
That is ultimately there to not let us watch that film anymore because it's the voice of a problematic actor.
Oh, yeah, there is that. Yeah, there is that.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I don't know.
Yeah. I really enjoyed Rose Byrne's voice in this film. I think she did really great.
Something interesting. We've been talking for roughly 45 minutes about this film, and it's good because, and this is a weird thing, we didn't talk about like we've just been talking about the film as the film.
Right.
We talked a little bit about the art direction and stuff, but the performances in this movie all around are phenomenal. First and foremost, I'll even say your boy Luke Hawker.
So I know I've met Luke Hawker a couple of times. I've worked on projects around him. He's an actor from Wellington, New Zealand.
He works at Weta Workshop. He was the lead director on the Mother robot, which is actually him.
Yeah,
he's the actor in this suit they designed.
I loved when it reminded me of Interstellar, for example, when Mother started running. And it was that sense of like you've watched this design kind of walk around in one scenario, and then suddenly they shift to another scenario, and you realize the design has broader implications. In Interstellar, you saw it was the cube robots that eventually realized.
And this Mother goes from like a dotting just like Rosie the robot from the Jetsons, although that rolled. But and then like when something hits the fan, Mother snaps into like a battle-esque mode and starts like soldier running.
There's so many subtle hints in the design of this robot that is so well done. So, for example, one thing I noticed is when Mother was walking away, and it was a reverse shot, that she has slightly wider hips than a robot probably would need.
Yeah.
And that's, indicative of what her role is in this, which is that sort of maternal thing.
Yeah.
And I love the design of her.
The heat pads on the arms and the stomach.
On her
to hold babies.
To hold the baby. And then she has this sort of like music player in her arm, and she's
playing Moon River.
And I love the design of her, so much in sort sort of hard objects like this, the challenge is how do you express emotion through a hard object?
And the face is very, very good.
Yeah, the face has basically these two sort of circular
one eye in the center, and then two circular, basically buttons, let's call them, that like go on a half circle, and they move up and down in unison.
And it's and you're looking at it going, I'm not sure it's intended to look like this, but whenever she expresses some sense of joy, it looks like a smile.
Yeah, it moves to the points where to smile.
And I thought that was just such a great consideration of design.
I was watching I watched like this half-hour interview with Luke about the design of the robot and all the different things. It's like, so he weighs like 145 pounds.
Yeah, he's a very slight guy. Good-looking man too.
This suit weighed 90.
Right.
He designed it down to every sort of millimeter of his body because otherwise he wouldn't be able to do the things he needed. He was talking about like there was a joint like just in the elbow joint. He had to sand something for a day to get it down a millimeter to make sure that like his elbow would work. He like made sure the bicep rings and the ball bearings all match his measurements, and it was so many different materials.
Yeah.
To the point where he said the most expensive part of the entire movie was Mother's hands.
Right.
Because he's a small guy, but he's actually like me. He has big hands.
Yeah.
And he was like, he didn't want
humble brag.
comic. What's that? Oh, because hand size. Spoiler alert: hand size and penis size totally not incongruent. I don't know.
Ask the president of the United States.
Oh no. But he was worried that the robot would have like just these dumb big hands. So they spent the majority of or a lot of their budget on making the hands are made out of actually what's it called? It's scented titanium.
Okay.
And it's 2 millimeters thick across all of the pieces, so it can actually maneuver.
He can
and it's light enough and it moves and whatever. And the interviewer, when they were looking at it, like they both sort of nerded out because they were both machinists.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, this shouldn't be able to this has never been like built like this before, but they needed it to have because Mother has to do very specific, precise things.
Yeah.
Other cool stuff, the way he saw in the suit was through basically the same type of optic cameras that drone pilots use. So like it's almost like a stereoscopic 3D thing where it's like you kind of sort of see in 3D. You put it.
You mean the actor?
Inside Luke
in the suit,
and so he could actually see. And granted, he didn't have any periphery, and he had to rely on his team to sort of take care of him on the sides. But like they first tried to like make it so he could see through some of the stuff, and it just didn't work. So they had to put cameras in and whatnot.
I mean, obviously, this is the sort of fundamental thing here is that it's a live practical effect. And that's what
it shows and helps. And God, just do this more. I go back to I was talking.
It's expensive though.
I know, but like that's where your money should go. Like a lot of times, depending, like for instance, when they get outside of the bunker, it's very green screen. You can tell.
I think it's an augmentation of like real locations.
I mean, I don't think that they were ever off of a studio. I honestly don't think so. We should look it up because
the beach thing felt like they were on. A real
maybe they walked to the beach. Yes, but like when they were in the
barren field.
The barren field on the beach when it wasn't the water. Yeah. Like everything did feel green screen to me, which is fine. But like that's sort of my point. They knew they had a certain amount of money, and they knew what was the important element versus what they could dump more money into to make look 4% better.
Right.
Like, and that's just smart producing. And when you're having Mother is one of the main characters.
Right.
And if it was a CG robot, I just don't think you could pull off the type of things you'd need to pull off with Mother.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been for the last week, I don't know why this has been my relaxation binge, is watching a bunch of filmmaking reality shows like Project Greenlight and The Chair. And the reason I watch them is I think it reminds me of the challenge that every film comes up. You know, every film is a miracle essentially. But in the last season of Project Greenlight, there was this like real push for the director to shoot on film. It was like this famous thing. It memed all over the internet when it came out in 2014. And basically, the director was given a choice: you can have $300,000 to shoot this film on film, or you can have 2 extra shooting days. and the director chose to shoot on film. And I think the thing that you're talking about there is the subtle choices that you have to make for the success and health of the film.
Yes.
At the sacrifice of other things.
Yeah.
And like, one of the sacrifice, although, there's no part of me that goes, if you're not interested in sort of production management, production of films, if you're watching this, I don't think anything feels compromised. Like nothing when you watch it feels like, oh, they had a low budget. Like it feels like
you're saying outside of being sort of industry person. Like
yeah,
looking at it like in that way.
Yeah, if you're a general audience member, there's nothing in this that looks and feels cheap or that like they had to compromise on a certain vision. It feels like the vision was the thing that was articulate. We talked about this on Hereditary, where the film was kind of designed. Like they built the sets for that film, and it seems like an odd choice because it was just a house, but it was so integral to the design of the film that kind of made sense. And it was like the production really like understood that. And I think that's what you're talking about in terms of the articulation of this. Of course, they managed to get the infrastructure of Weta Workshop behind this, which for those who aren't involved in the industry, Weta Workshop, Weta Digital are two of the best, both practical and post-production visual effects houses in the world, both in New Zealand. Shout out to my hometown, Wellington.
Humble brag.
Humble brag. Is that a humble brag for me? That's more of like
generalized humble brag.
No, that's a shout out because I'm not involved with either of those two places. I'm just like celebrating that they exist. Humble brag was if I owned Weta Workshop, if I worked there, or I was somehow involved with those places. I'm not.
But you know,
I'm from the
there.
place.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like saying that humble brag, New York produced Martin Scorsese. That's because of humble brag.
Humble brag.
That makes no sense. The rules of humble brag.
I'm going to make it so nebulous that it will not work anymore.
Right. You should. There's a great
humble
brag. There's a great episode of Comedy Bang Bang with Harris Whittles talking about humble brag. Rest in peace, Harris Whittles.
No.
I think I there's so much to chew on this film, and I think you posited the question that it's not fruitful to say something is a perfect film, right?
I would think and.
I'm
right now, yes, sure. Let's go with it.
I'm struggling to think of anything in this film that fundamentally doesn't work in a way that negates its overall style. And like
what it's trying to do,
and I would say that is a degree of perfection that I think is rarely seen.
See, now we're getting into a very dangerous territory here,
right?
Because
what's the implication of saying perfection?
So for instance, let's say because we both loved this film and we can't find anything that it's doing that's particularly damage what it's trying to do, that we think it's like a perfect film, right?
Yeah.
The problem is, and it rotates back with different viewers and different audiences and etc. And I'm not saying this is me, but I could also see, let's just go back to a popcorny nonsense movie, Spider-Man Far From Home.
Right.
Someone could say, that's a perfect film because it did exactly what I thought it was going to do and what I wanted it to do and what I think the directors were trying to do. And then if we said that this was, we would be like, we can't say that person's incorrect either because it's all about. I mean, we even go back to the critic reviews versus the audience reviews of this film. Like people were like, "Oh, it's slow. The ending's dumb," and I know those aren't like constructive things to say,
right?
But we get into a bit of a slope there.
I think the broader implication of what you're saying is that a critic can't make rationalized choices.
I think again, it goes back.
That's what concerns me about what you're saying.
It goes back to wording. I don't think anyone can say, "I Am Mother" is a perfect film. I think someone can say, "I Am Mother" is a perfect film for me,
right?
Because again, the definition of perfection is a bit, and then you want to go into like, and it's
your middle name really should be changed to something.
I know, but I think it's kind of important. I find it very interesting too because. Okay, even let's go down the hole. If I said I Am Mother is a perfect film for me,
right?
It's a little bit weird because then the idea of perfection would mean like this is everything that this movie did is exactly what I want. But then if something else comes out, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay, fix what I'm saying here.
Well, because like we've had this discussion before about Guillermo del Toro, for example, where I've said I think his films are perfect films. Like I think not The Shape of Water, but what was the one?
Pan's Labyrinth.
Pan's Labyrinth is like in my estimation a perfect film. Like I didn't quite respond to it, per se, but I think it's a perfect film.
Wait, what?
We've had this conversation.
I know. Wait, say it again. You didn't respond to it, but it's a perfect film.
Yeah.
Then how is is it a perfect film?
Because
if you didn't
I
respond
think
to it?
everything that film is setting out to do, it does brilliantly, and it executes it
So
really
you
well.
think on a technical level?
No, on a technical level. I personally, for some reason, whatever reason, I didn't quite respond to it.
Well,
but
then what
but
are
I
the
think,
levels? I guess is my question.
but that's my response to it, but I still think I cannot fault any moment in that film for not working or not doing exactly what it is intended to do, and exactly what it intended to do beautifully.
So you're now positing that you know exactly what they were trying to do, even though it was something that would not resonate with you, and they executed that to perfection.
I think there's we've talked about this on that episode.
I know. I'm talking about it again.
Yeah. Is that for me, that film didn't quite resonate. There was just a moment where I think if the film was to truly land for me, then there would be a moment of excitement, and it didn't quite happen to me. But I can certainly see that the moment is there, and it happens, and it's beautiful, and it's executed perfectly.
So here's my question, and I love this. Is there a modification, and this is sort of the so that film, there's no way that it could be modified at all. Now I'm saying like in its inception, like taking that thing and to make it both a perfect film and that resonates with you. Because if there
Here's one thing I would say about it is I watch it and acknowledge that in the right context I might feel that way on a different viewing. But
it's subjective.
I mean, criticism is subjective.
Sure,
right?
perfection is subjective.
Yeah, perfection is subjective in criticism of art, right?
But for instance, like art, or calling something a perfect thing, you have to sort of put onto it for you. Because it is subjective.
If we're thinking about the sort of the broader context of your need for semantic ideation that is logically rational, I think
I am mother.
Yeah,
no, literally, I am mother.
I think you're weighing the word perfection as to have broader implications because of like if you say the word perfection here, what is it? What is the ramifications?
I'm going off the definition of the word perfection, meaning perfect.
You even said that. Like, if I say this is perfect, then what am I saying about every other film?
Well, you have to measure it against other things because there's like
can more than one thing be perfect?
Interesting.
That's what I think. I think we're sort of getting.
Yes, but in different contexts, in different things. So, but then you can't say. So, for instance, I can't say I Am Mother is a perfect film.
Right.
Because then that's just putting everything that I would consider a film against this and saying this is the best, most perfect one. Where I could say something along the lines of...
But yeah, couldn't more than one film be perfect?
But then when you do that, you're splintering what the category of perfection is. If you're going to use words to label things, you have to use words accurately to label things. That's what I'm saying. Again, there's a whole emotional side of this that I'm not really discussing.
But I guess the only thing about what you just said though that sort of I'm sort of curious about is that means that there's a uniformity amongst films, right? Like
it's a categorization, and
the categorization
and how you
is about
get out of that categorization is you further sub-tier the categories,
right? But not even sub-tier, but there's like a lack of uniformity. Like a comedy is a different film from a science fiction film. A war film is a different film.
Only because we put as a society and with our language those values on those things. Yes.
No, but there's a variety of things, and I guess what you're saying is that you can't say that a war film, for example, is a perfect film because it's a different genre to a science fiction film, which I'll
go one further because it's a different film. Like things are so you like. I'm trying to think. Like I don't think I'll ever be able to, even on this podcast or in my life, be able to accurately say the proper thing. So if I wanted to say, because I really like I Am Mother. So if I wanted to put it,
we've gone beyond like whether we like
into
I Am
the
Mother.
content. No, I'm using this in the example.
Yeah.
If I wanted to try to accurately say how I thought I Am Mother was a perfect film, I would say. And again, this is not headline grabbing or clickbaity, but I would say something along the lines of I Am Mother is a perfect science fiction dystopia film about robots trying to figure out the best course of humanity that I have ever seen. That's a more accurate statement to me than just saying I Am Mother is a perfect film. Because I can punch holes in that first one even myself if I said it.
Right.
Whereas if I sort of the more specific the definition or the critique or the that sort of thing is where I live.
I'm going to pull up a Wikipedia here thing and a definition of perfection going back to Aristotle, which has got a 3-tiered definition, which is A, which is complete, which contains all the requisite parts, which is so good that nothing in the of the kind could be better,
right?
Which has attained its purpose. And I think the second one is the one that you have trouble.
Well, it's more the third one, right? The perfect, nothing could be better. That's why you have to put.
There's 3, which is complete, contains all the requisite parts. 2 is which is so good that nothing of a kind could be better.
Oh, you didn't read the third one. I got
3
confused.
is which has attained its purpose.
Yeah, I'm on 2. You're on 3.
Yeah, I think we're having a sort of,
and we don't have time to go into the differences of those sort of things, but it's interesting.
It's interesting because from a metatextual point of view,
we're both correct due to Wikipedia.
No. From a metatextual point of view, this is essentially the philosophical question that Mother is kind of asking.
Ding 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 ding.
Which is that because she is ultimately trying to.
I'm agreeing.
Get humanity towards a state of perfection, right? Like she believes that there is a state of perfection, and like what is the threshold for perfection for her in this scenario? And the reward for perfection for her is the propagation of the species, right?
Yeah.
And I think she says this thing, which is that I want to celebrate my maker. Or something like that, like it reminded me of David from Alien Prometheus.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, which is far.
I'll do the fingering,
perfect. Yeah.
Said David.
Yeah, far from perfect. But I think that's an interesting question because I think the broader philosophical thing that you're sort of getting towards is that nothing can attain perfection because the categorization of perfection requires a decategorization of other things, right?
That's definitely a piece of it.
Right.
I don't know if
I will just come in with this, which is that I don't disagree with you on a semantic level, and I don't disagree with your rationalization. I will just say this for our listeners: I Am Mother for me is a perfect film, and you should absolutely watch it.
There we go. I think you should watch I Am Mother as well. I think it is well worth your time. I think beyond the fun little thing that we just sort of roundaboutly came back to the film due to Shahir's meta tagging in his own brain. I think it has a lot to say, and I think you can get into fun discussions with your friends. I do wish I watched it with people so I could talk about it right after, as I did go to bed and I was like, do I talk to Zoe, my cat, about it? I don't. That's crazy, right?
I mean, Zoe is Mother in this scenario,
that's
right?
true.
Like she's tucking you in, and she's deciding whether you live or die.
Yeah. Oh, God, that is so true. This has been the only podcast about the film I Am Mother. Shahir, when you're just not being perfect, where can folks find you?
You can find me imperfectly being emotionally unresonant towards people at my website, www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD. Matt, when you are trying to figure out what is perfect, where can people find you?
In the mirror. No, I'm kidding. I'm so kidding.
Humble brag?
No, that's just brag. No, and also a lie. You can find me lying at MATTHEWKROL.com for my life and works. Also, Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram and PSN, or Emperor MSK on Twitter. Also, shout out to the Extra Credits crew. We're doing some good stuff over there. Actually, you know what? We just finished a couple weeks ago our extra sci-fi season on dystopias and apocalypses. And if you like the sort of thing about I Am Mother, there's a lot of different takes we do across, I believe, 10 or 9 episodes of great literary works of dystopias and apocalypses. 1984, Fahrenheit, Player Piano, a bunch of good stuff. Stand on Zanzibar. There's so many, like, sci-fi is a rich tapestry of messing with your brain and trying to figure out the logical fallacies of the world. And you should go check those out.
Yeah.
Next week, we don't know. What are we doing?
I mean, hopefully we'll get to the farewell.
Yeah.
Which I've heard very good things about. Hopefully if we can get some time for that. Please write us in if you have things that you want us to see. Hit us up at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter at onlymoviepod. Tell us the things that we might be missing on Netflix or that we should see in a theater.
I really want to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Of course, we're going to see that. There's another person I knew has the... cinematic pod. Oh, I've forgotten the name. Hang on.
My journey with that movie is the first trailer. I was like, I don't care. And then every thing that's come out since, I've been like, this just keeps getting me more pumped, and I don't know. Piped gets me more piped. I'm so piped right now.
You're so piped. I actually have forgotten the name of the podcast, but I think it's the Pure Cinema podcast.
There you go.
With a friend from a long time ago who I haven't spoken to in a very, very long time, but the Pure Cinema podcast with Elric Kane, who I went to college with, and who in the last week interviews Quentin Tarantino about the cinematic references for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And you listen to Quentin Tarantino, and you realize that this man has seen more movies than I think any human being could have seen in one lifetime.
Yeah.
And he's so specific about the references he knows. Like he knows he brought up a speech from a little known Elliot Gould film and he did the speech verbatim.
Of course he did.
And it was it went on for a while and was remarkable, and you could tell it was off the cuff, like he wasn't like reading it from a list because he was prompted it somewhere. It's remarkable. His film history is remarkable. We had I had some not as nice things to say about The Hateful Eight, but Quentin Tarantino gets every dollar from me for all time. Yes, we will definitely see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which might be the week after the fall.
Probably.
Farewell.
Also, I felt bad that we didn't actually talk. I know we're just right back into the thing, but Clara Ruttgard and Hilary Swank also did phenomenal in this film. It's funny because we got so wrapped up in what the film means, we didn't get into the performances. I did just want to shout that out because
If there's any not negative thing that I have to say is like the future is all white people again. No, that's a snide remark.
Well, the baby looked not white.
Okay,
the brother.
Cool. I doesn't.
But it's legit.
No, it is what it is.
There was an hour and 40-something minutes of just white people in a robot.
don't.
Maybe it should just be called Just White People in a Robot.
Just white people in a robot. Okay, if you enjoyed I Am Just White People in a Robot. No, I hate doing that thing which is like imposing a thing on it, but films reflect society, yada yada yada. Yeah, whatever. Anywho, so catch us next week when we might take in The Farewell.
There'll be movies to talk about.
Yeah,
or just one. Talk to you later.
Bye.